welcome to the Leader Impact podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make this show even better, please let us know. The best way to stay connected in Canada is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. But if you're listening from outside of Canada, check out our website at leaderimpact.com. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and our guest today is Mike Marchese. Mike has been in sales for most of his life, from his first part-time job selling wicker flower baskets door to door at the age of 13. Today, Mike is the Canadian Sales Director for Grote Industries, a global manufacturer and supplier of vehicle lighting and electrical components. Mike has played an instrumental role in the company's continued growth as a market leader and credits his team and the relationships they have built with their client base for their success. He is passionate about helping leaders reach their full potential in their personal, professional, and spiritual lives, and he promises to leave us inspired as he will share some of his own life stories on how his relationship with God continues to grow. Speaking locally and internationally has become an important part of Mike's life, and we are excited to be part of that journey. So join us now for a conversation with Mike on how our attitude starts with us in our personal, professional, and spiritual lives. Welcome to Leader Impact Podcast, Mike.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you for the invite, Lisa. Excited about this.
I'm excited to finally sit down with you. Now, to anyone listening, I do have the opportunity to sort of meet with Mike for a few minutes. We talk about where we're going. And interestingly, Mike, I found you because I'm in sales too, right? And
Right.
we're very on people.
Yes.
We're on. And as the conversation went on, I really got to know Mike. So I'm excited to be here because I really hope everyone gets to learn a little bit more about you.
Perfect.
All right. So we definitely start our show with just sharing a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I live just outside of Hamilton, Ontario, and in the same hometown. It's called Waterdown, a small suburb of Hamilton. And I grew up here, moved away for close to 20 years, and came back home, I guess. So I've been here again for almost 10 years now. And yeah, my family were immigrants from Europe, my mom being from Holland, my dad being from Italy. And this is the area that they settled in. And even though I've moved away and been to many other places, I guess home is home. And this is where I am once again.
So in your introduction, it says that you have been selling baskets since 13. Tell us a little bit about growing up, being at school. Were you a great student? Were you selling stuff in school?
I was one of those great students. No. With my parents coming over young, they didn't have the opportunity for education. And as such, it wasn't a hard push on myself to have that either. And that kind of suited me because I wasn't a very good student, or at least didn't fit into, learning the way it was presented in school. So I was distracted. I was interested in anything but my schoolwork. So, I was held back and things like that. And so, the idea that I would grow up and be in leadership of any type really wasn't on my radar when I was younger. And going through school, really didn't know what I wanted to do when I got older.
Yeah. I think that's important. I didn't know that, but that's really important to just talk about because I think, there's that whole are leaders born or are they made?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're both. But you are a testimony to that, you know what? I wasn't good at school either. Like,
Okay.
So I'm right there with you. And I did better in university, like when I wanted to go. But anyway, this is your story.
And that is a huge difference, right? Once you want to go, once you want to learn, that changes everything. But for me, coming out of high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought to myself, well, I have a passion for vehicles. I love cars. I love trucks. I love motorcycles. So maybe something in that regard. So I thought, okay, I'll take up the trades and I'll become a mechanic. And actually got a job straight out of high school, working for a company where I was doing basic maintenance. And I quickly learned something, though. I had no God given talent to be a mechanic. And I did stay at that position for probably over 3 years and really hating every minute of it and thinking to myself, wow, what am I going to do? I'm depressed every Sunday night when I know I have to go back to work.
Oh,
That's how it was. And so I thought, what do I do? And I thought back to that job when I was 13 years old, selling baskets door to door. And that was something that my family and friends didn't think I would excel at in any way, shape, or form because I'm naturally introverted. I'm not outgoing. I'm happy to sit in a room and listen, not be the guy speaking. And so they thought, how are you ever going to do sales? And I ended up excelling at that job as a 13-year-old. Uh, and I turned into the trainer. So when new kids came on board, I was the one taking them out and teaching them how to sell door to door. So
that's funny.
yeah,
You
had
do have a
no
little
idea
bit,
the impact it would have.
got a little side business as a 13-year-old.
I did.
Sales training. I love it.
Yeah. So I
Um,
actually met my who would become my wife while I was at this job, and I really credit her with pushing me to get out of that role I was in, and that made me reflect and think about the sales position. So I thought, all right, well, maybe sales is where I would go. Also had an idea about perhaps pursuing a career in law enforcement, becoming a police officer. So I started to go down both paths, actually. And what happened is we ended up in a recession in Ontario around this time. I was in my early 20s. Um, Leona was now my wife. She was pregnant with our son, and we had a mortgage. But what I didn't have now is a job because I ended up being unemployed. And I was unemployed for almost a year, which I certainly didn't expect. The blessing of that was I got to be there for the first few months of my son's life. And so, whether it was mom, whether it
uh,
was dad, whoever got him, it was cool. He was used to both of us. So that was the bonus side of it for sure.
I love that you found the bonus. I
Hmm.
love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a bonus if you look for it.
Yeah.
There's always a positive.
Yeah.
So, but the negative was I couldn't support my family.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we didn't have the internet back then, of course. So I started, scouring the newspaper and I just had to do anything. And I found a job driving a delivery truck, which at least gave me work, but I actually made more money the previous year on unemployment. So it wasn't a high paying job, but it was a long hour job. And one day I'm in my truck and I'm driving along and I had to pull over to the side of the road because I just felt myself getting tight and I really felt like I was having a heart attack. And I'm sitting there in my truck on the side of the road thinking, okay, I'm too young to be having a heart attack. So what's going on? And I realized today it was an anxiety attack because I just didn't know how I was going to support my family, pay my bills. And the only thing I could think of doing that day was saying a prayer. And I wasn't really, I was a churchgoer. I wasn't a Christian at this time. And I can explain that later. But I said a prayer and I said, God, could you just help me find a job? It doesn't have to be the highest paying job. I just want to be able to support my family. And if I could just make this much, I'd work as hard as I can. And literally, Lisa, within 2 weeks, a friend called with an opportunity. And I had a couple of interviews, and I'll never forget it when the sales manager called me up and he goes, Kid, I'm going to give you a shot. And this was for a sales position. He says, I'm going to give you a shot. And if you want it, I'm going to start you at this much money. And it was the exact number I prayed for in my truck.
Oh man.
Yeah,
That's a great
right?
story, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well,
was amazing.
yeah. So you've been at Grote Industries for many years
Yes.
and you got Canadian sales
I'm the
director.
Canadian sales director, and that was the job that I received that day I prayed in my truck. So I started with Grote Industries after that, and this April I'll have been there 30 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing because you think of people move jobs frequently,
Hmm.
and 30 years is a great accomplishment. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, 30 years you've been there, you've been through many ups and downs.
Hmm.
And I think I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, COVID hit, and you're in a sales industry, like
Right.
you're trying to sell stuff. And I don't know about, but in the auto industry, I know the car lots are a little empty.
They are.
So,
They are.
I'm sure there was a little bit of, I'm sure there was a lot of anger, like, why is this happening to us? But how did you handle this? You mean you have a team?
Yeah. So I'm responsible for our team across the country and all divisions in Canada. We really weren't too worried at first. It was going to be 28 days in my office, which I thought, hey, this is going to be a nice break because I'm usually on an airplane heading somewhere. And so this gave me an opportunity to be home for what I thought would be 28 days. And I thought, okay, well, my team is sitting at home. How do I keep them productive? How do we keep engaged with our customers? And believe it or not, like people weren't yet accustomed to these virtual meetings and realities. So at the
Yeah.
time, I quickly set my team up with accounts to be able to do virtual meetings. And I sat back the one day and reflected. And I said, okay, this COVID thing, what is it? How do we work around this? And I actually created an acronym for COVID so that I continually I set up a weekly at first, and then it moved to a biweekly sales meeting with my team where we would review this acronym of COVID. So
All right.
C stood for create opportunity. How do we create opportunities at a time that's unlike any time we've ever lived in? So, what does opportunity look like? And again, that story, how do you find the positive, right, in something that's potentially negative? So, really went to work on that, asking my guys, focus where do and how do we create opportunity? And as a company, we transitioned some equipment to make PPE equipment. We created some new lighting products for UV protection, actually UV disinfectant type of things for vehicles. So really, we did a quick transition, which was great. So that was the creating opportunity. The O, the O stood for others, being others focused. So let's not dwell on ourselves. I'm not happy. I'm stuck in my office. I'm used to traveling. How are we others focused? How do we be there for our customers? How do we be there with our families? Get our eyes off of ourselves, basically. So that's what I was encouraging to do with that one.
Because I mean, in sales, you get wrapped up. My job is sales.
Right.
Like, and I think of my son who's like, my job in this hockey team is to score. I'm like, no. But the same thing, right? No, we need to be focused on others. It's more than sales. So that's
Hmm.
great. I love your
Hmm.
O. All
There
right.
we go. Well, the next part, the V, I think is equally important, and that stood for value. So in difficult times, how do we continue to bring value to our customer base? Corporately, we did that. We sensed, okay, this could cause a problem with the supply chain. And so we greatly increased our inventories and our production schedules. And as of December, 2021 was a very difficult supply chain year. We ended the
Mhm.
year at 90% fill rate, which we're blown
Oh,
away by, and our customers are blown away by. So we brought value right to our customer base that way. And there was other ways as well. Getting in, maybe there was opportunities to do things that we wouldn't have done otherwise.
yeah.
So yeah, just a real focus on value.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
The I stood for inspiration. So you're home. We're not traveling again. Find some inspiration. When's the last time you've read a book? When's the last time you've taken a class or a course? Anything like that. So myself, as an example, I picked up a guitar and thought, you know what? I've always wanted to be able to play. I'm going to learn guitar. Unfortunately, it was very much like my experience being a mechanic. No God-given talent.
I picked up a ukulele.
Oh,
Yeah, no. I so want to play. And I thought, well, I picked up a guitar first, and then I thought, okay, the ukulele has one less string. Nope, no
yeah.
talent.
So
But
yeah,
good for you.
where do I go for inspiration next? So, And
Well,
then
I love the. Oh,
go no, go
I
ahead.
love the. I love the. If anyone's watching this on YouTube, I can see Mike, and there's a picture behind him of a bike.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking you love biking. That must be some inspirational there.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
so riding bike or is a motorcycle?
I
Because
do
you know.
both.
Oh,
So
you do both.
I say I'm addicted, unfortunately, to anything with two wheels, and whether it has a motor or no motor. But yeah, so that was a great inspiration for me in that for the first time. So I've been a mountain biker. That's my passion
Okay.
with bicycling, and I've been doing it for almost 30 years. But of course, with my travel schedule, it was limited. So I
Hmm.
was a weekend warrior. I would go out, the guys who were in shape would kick my butt, and I'd be there wheezing on the side of the trail. But with COVID, I was now home every night for the first time in my career. So I could actually have a set schedule. Here's the day or here's the nights that I'm going to be out on the bike. And that was great inspiration to just be able to unwind in that way. Yeah.
That is good. Good
Yeah.
for you.
Which led me to the D, which stood for daily gratefulness.
Oh,
Right? How are we grateful? Yeah, this isn't fun. There's things going on, but we have so much to be grateful for. I'm grateful that I could now ride my bike more. I'm grateful I could be home every night with my wife. I'm grateful that I can try new things. I'm grateful that I still have a job, right? That
yeah,
wasn't the case
yeah,
for everybody through
yeah,
these last couple of years. So just focus on the positive and what we have to be thankful for.
yeah. Did you ever, so obviously this is something, you teach your teams. I mean,
Hmm.
you guys go and did you tell them to do like three daily gratefuls? I'm grateful for three things. Or do
Yeah,
you have
so
some sort of exercise?
I wasn't specific with the three things. However,
Yeah.
we would go through the points on our sales meetings.
Oh,
So, how
good.
did you create opportunity? How did you bring value? And what have you done for inspiration? And what are you grateful for? So, we would
Yeah.
actually go through. There'd be 15 of us on the call, and we would actually take the time to have each person speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny because today I just watched a TED Talks and I wrote it down how grateful rewires your brain.
Mm,
And I don't think your brain knows if you're experiencing happy or if you tell yourself you're happy.
right.
Your brain just knows you're happy.
They
So be grateful.
McDonald's said smiles are free. That was a slogan years ago, right? We can all smile, and it
Yeah,
changes your disposition.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you go through that weekly. Like we go through the C, the O, the V, because
Hmm.
this isn't just a COVID response. And I know the acronym is COVID, but this is management. This is finding create the opportunities, being focused on others. Like I love that every
We
week.
often say we need to get back to basics. I like to ask, why did we leave the basics? Right? The basics matter.
Yeah,
So,
we're all trying to look for that super cool new thing.
yeah.
It's not. It's the basics. It's you didn't pick up the phone. That's the other basic.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just instead of texting or emailing, pick up the phone. And I know
Absolutely.
that's a big sales thing. So,
Yeah, and even more today because there has been so much email, texting, and
oh
messaging.
man.
It's just like I spoke to a customer just last week. So he's been a customer my entire career, but he's recently retired. And I gave him a call, and yeah, literally, it was just so good to hear his voice,
Hmm.
right? And actually have a conversation.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So did you so I mean this is your team. This is your sales team. Did you ever cuz you've got the customers. Did you ever transition this response to your customers or
Yeah. So from a corporate side, I would meet with our head offices, do review meetings, see how our team was doing and how we were doing for them. And as part of my review meetings, I actually started all of those with my COVID response as well, so that they understood what we were focusing on and where they fit into that. So what are our goals? What's our strategic plan for the year? And yeah, how does all that work with you as our customer?
and how did they respond to that?
It was interesting. I could see people taking screenshots because I would actually have a PowerPoint up with the points, and people asking me for
Oh,
copies of it and things like that. So I think it went over very well.
that's excellent. Yeah, see, you just shared some love right there. Good. Because I'm sure people listening are writing down your acronym for
I
going
hope so.
for the
Yeah.
words. Yep.
Yes. And if there's anything at all you remember out of that, be grateful.
Oh,
Much to be
yeah,
grateful for.
right.
Hmm.
So, you have spent the majority of your life in sales. And is there a leadership book or a sales book that changed your life?
I would say to change my life, I would say that's pretty significant if something did. Um, and being that I grew up with this mindset that I'm not a good student, I wasn't a big reader early on. But we all had a cassette player in our car, and I would listen to tapes. So that was the avenue I took. I was doing uh, my first few years. I was traveling roughly 70,000 kilometers a year in my car. And that gave me a lot of time to be listening to tapes. And if I was to share something I remember with you, it was actually two different people, and I forgive me, I don't have the names, but the one was basically telling me to work harder than my competition. So when you think, as an on the road salesperson, when you think you're done for the day, go make one more call. So I started to do that. And I did that at times with customers I didn't necessarily want to call on. You know, that one's going to be a waste of time. Do I really even want to bother? Or
Oh,
do I start driving home from Ottawa now and get back in time? It's like, no, I'm going to make that one more call. And I
yeah.
remember I use Ottawa as an example because I remember this one circumstance where I made that one call to a gentleman who everyone said he's a really tough guy to deal with. Like, you don't want to deal with this guy. And he was my one last call on this afternoon. And he did what we call a changeover. He made the decision that afternoon to take out my competitor's product line and put mine in. And that just showed me, right? That one more call.
One more call.
So
That is a great story.
have always
Uh,
worked to do that. And I think it comes back to my parents, right? The work ethic that they showed just it was instilled in me. And the second one wasn't a book or a tape; it was actually an article. And the title of that article was "Make Calls, Make Calls, Make Calls." Again, resonated with me, and so when I was a territory manager, a sales representative, it was my goal to outcall anybody that was out there, whether they were a direct competitor or just someone in the industry. And I think part of that came to that promise in my truck that if I got this job, I would work as hard as I could.
that's great.
Hmm.
When you talk about the audio tapes, because I think we could be about the same age, so I got some audio tapes. Did you ever listen to Zig Ziglar?
I had listened to some Zig Ziglar.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
he.
for sure.
I still have his, and I was cleaning out my computer, found them yesterday. I'm like, I need to listen to these because he just throws in so much humor. Like I don't know, he knows how to throw in humor. Just you start
Right.
listening, and then you like, I need a laugh, and then
Yeah.
like he's
One of the others
he's.
I listened to was Bob Proctor, who
Oh
actually
yeah.
just passed away a week or two ago, I believe. So
Mm.
just,
Wow.
mhm.
Wow,
So he
those are good.
left a long legacy.
That is good. So we're going to transition now a little bit about your spiritual side. If you can maybe share with us sort of that journey. You spoke of it a little earlier and said we'll get back to that, but share it with everyone else because I think people think we grow up in this strong faith, and
Yeah.
many of us we didn't.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm
It
certainly
was.
that person. I grew up in a church, a religious family. We actually attended church twice per Sunday. We had a morning service and an afternoon service. And much like my first job, I hated every minute of it. But I did it as I was taught that's what I was supposed to do. And my wife actually grew up in the same denomination, not the same church building, but the same denomination. And that's how we met. But we were actually in the same boat. Neither of us really resonated with what we grew up in. And so we got married, and we were going through the motions. So we were going to church, we were bringing our son to church, we were doing all of those things. But when I was out on the road on Monday, there was no evidence in any way, shape, or form that I was a Christian, right? If we say we're a Christian, it technically means we're a Christ follower, that we're following the ways of Jesus. And other than going to church on a Sunday, I wasn't doing that. So the promise I made in my truck, I think, was significant. So again, work ethic, I worked very hard, but in doing so and building great relationships with customers, I forgot about my relationship at home. To the point my wife and I were on the brink of a divorce. It was, yeah, it was messy. It was ugly. I was in a very bad place. And my son was of the point of, he was getting older at this point, and he's just seeing the hypocrisy in it, going, why do you make me come to church every week when this is who you guys are and what I see? And my son ended up, I found out later, starting drugs in high school. And by the end of high school, was quite heavily into drugs and alcohol. And I was so focused on myself, I didn't even notice that. I was blind to it, and I think back now, it's like, how could I be so blind? How could I be so selfish to that?
Yeah, I don't think you're the only one, Mike. I think a lot of parents, it happens and they just, how did I not know? How did I
Right.
not know? So thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing.
and the impact we have on our children, and it goes back, right? So my relationship with my parents and everything else. Well, I'll tell you, as someone who felt he was, joked here today that I wasn't a very good student. Well, I really believed that, right? So I was looking for worth. And one day my teacher, so this was in grade 3, after being held back a year, asked me to go to the front of the classroom. And she asked me to do something quite simple for everyone else in the class. She asked me to write my name on the board. And I didn't know how to spell my own name. So I was standing up there and I was mortified. I was getting angry. I'm thinking, why would you do this to me? Right. And so I'm embarrassed. So I really think I walked away from that. And from that day forward, I had to be the toughest, the strongest, the best in sports. Like, I had to show somehow that I had worth and value. Um, so I think that's part of why I did good in my career, because it was this perfectionist aspect of me that I needed to be the best at no matter what I did. And unfortunately, I put that same pressure on my wife and my son, who didn't need to be the best at everything they did. But if they weren't, I thought it was a negative reflection on myself. So that's what was driving my family relationships down, my difficulties with my wife, and as a guy who always loved fighting, so I watched professional wrestling when I was younger, and boxing and all of these different things. I was invited out one day to hear a professional wrestler speak at a conference. It would have been very much like a Leader Impact forum or conference like that. And the wrestler's name was the Million Dollar Man, Ted DiBiase. Some of you might recognize that
Remember
name
that name?
for sure.
Yeah.
So Ted gets up and starts, talking these old wrestling stories and a lot of things that I remembered and resonated with. But he talked about reaching the pinnacle of success in his industry, more fame, more wealth, more anything that he thought he'd ever achieve, but he was empty and broken. And I'm thinking, I never expected to be here in my life. And I'm really feeling empty and broken right now. Like, I'm messing things up. And he shared the gospel that day in a way I had never heard it. So as I said, I had religion, which I thought was all about rules, and I hated those rules. But Ted started talking
Yeah.
about a relationship and how he started a relationship with Jesus. And I'm thinking, how do you have a relationship with Jesus, right? And so he shared the gospel. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was in need of forgiveness. I wasn't the good guy that I thought I was. And as a person who thought he was a Christian and would go to heaven when he died, I realized that day I'd be the guy that Jesus says, "Depart, for I never knew you." And that just woke me up. Yeah, I left there, and my wife would tell you today that that's when she had a new husband.
Wow.
And it's not like I changed overnight, but suddenly this guy who didn't read picked up a Bible and started reading the Bible on a daily basis. And I was,
Wow.
yeah, a book I never thought I could understand. And now I'm bringing it to my wife going, did you know that it says this? Have you seen this? Like, this is amazing. And we both just started to grow in our knowledge and understanding of what it means to be a Christian and how we're forgiven and loved. And um, yeah, we're now
So,
married. We'll be married 33 years, I think, this year.
so when you came home from the event,
Hmm.
was your wife? I mean, she saw that you were changed. Was there a buy-in right away, like we're moving forward in our faith, or was there ever a?
No,
She's like, yeah, I'm not so sure. Like she wasn't at the event.
correct.
You kind of had to sell her. There goes your sales technique. I don't know.
Yes, for sure. Well, thankfully, she did see a positive change in me, right? So that always helps.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't immediate. I would say probably a 3 to 4 year process of me sharing. Started having them listen to various messages or um, pastors online, things like that, and we just started to grow and learn. And my wife, quite frankly, was afraid and had a fear of leaving what we grew up in,
Mm, yep.
right? So, that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. Family doesn't understand and things like that. So there was a concern there. But once she hit that point, and I'll never forget it, one morning, it was a Monday morning, it was a Sunday morning, and she's like, I want to go to this new church we found. I'm done with our old life, and I want to move forward. So it was a few year process, but once the decision was made, it was made.
Yeah. Good. I have a question. I'm going to throw this out there, but when you make the decision, do you ever find that the crap starts coming at you to go, are you sure you want to make this decision? Like,
Mhm.
and I'm going to name him, I'm going to call him the devil.
Right.
We believe, and then all of a sudden there's that other force that's coming in going, yeah, you know what? Why don't I just share something bad with you? Why don't I force you to think differently and just try
Yeah.
to sway you, right? He's fighting. Someone else is fighting for you.
You are absolutely correct. And I've heard stories of other people now that are even worse than mine, but yeah, there's certainly that there. And what it is, in the Bible, there's a spot in Ephesians and it talks about the fiery darts of the evil one, which is what you're talking about. And there's times where I just felt like I'm being attacked, going, "Who are you to share Jesus with someone? Who are you to do this? You know who you are inside, right?" And
Oh,
you can have those things, and what I love later in that verse is says, "Take up the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God." And I truly believe if we are professing Christians, if we are not in the Word of God, being fed on a daily basis, we can't fight those fiery darts. So yeah, I believe strongly in that.
yeah. I hope people can understand that because that is very hard. That
Hmm.
you think it's that what comes into your mind is so negative, and like you said, who are you to think that you can do this?
Right.
Like you're and that's not you saying that.
Hmm.
That's an outside. So,
Yeah.
so how did you become involved with Leader Impact?
So a customer of mine in Alberta, actually, we were away at an event, and he was kind of aware of my journey here from religion to relationship and truly becoming a Christian. And he'd heard me speak at a few different industry events where I'm talking about our products, our company, and things like that. And he actually invited me to get involved with Leader Impact in their international ministry. So where they go out and go to South America or somewhere in the world and hold events. So he had asked me if I'd consider going to Mexico on what was called a global exchange. And I listened to him, of course, and I gave him what I call the Christian answer when you don't really want to do something. Do you know what that is, Lisa?
No, all I know is Christianese.
Well, yes, there's that. But
Yeah, no.
what we tend to do is say, I'll pray about it. Oh, that's
Yes, I,
interesting. I'll pray about it.
okay.
So that was my way of saying probably not. And but I held my word and I did pray about it. And I started to think about the fact that I had been praying for opportunities within business to be able to share my faith, to be able to share my journey. But it didn't quite click yet that that's what was offered to me with Leader Impact. So then a little while later, we go to church. And our pastor does a message on what's called the Great Commission. It's in Matthew 28, and it says, "Go therefore." And he focused on that first word, "go," for the entire message. Go, go, go. And at the end of it, my wife looks at me and says, "I guess you're going to Mexico." So I said, "All right, I'm doing this. I'm signing up. I get it." So I signed up to go to Mexico with Leader Impact, and admittedly with extremely low expectations, because I'm thinking I've been sharing at home and I really haven't seen any, great positive outcomes from it. I haven't led someone to Christ, if you will, and things like that. But what I saw happen in Mexico so profoundly impacted me, that I've never been the same since. And I've really seen, God just asks us to be faithful. Forget those lists of do's and don'ts and rules. I think of that command now to go. And if we just go, and whether that, it doesn't mean we have to go to Mexico, right? Go to your neighborhood, go to your workplace, just go and watch what I will do. And that's what I saw in Mexico, and I've seen it every place I've traveled to date. And it's never changed. So I love the Leader Impact International Ministry. And I can't wait to hit the road with them, or should I say the skies with them again.
Yeah. In the last, during COVID, I have done some speaking for them, like,
Okay.
because we're not flying anywhere. So we zoom into countries with
Yes.
translators, and uh, it's been amazing. And I have been asked to travel, which, I mean, right out, Mike, there's an expense to that.
Yep.
And, I'm like, maybe I have said I'll pray about that. I have done the Mike Marchese line,
Yes.
but yeah, I have been asked, and you've just maybe sold me. So
Well, Lisa,
thank
I'm encouraged by that. And
yeah,
I was in the same boat. Why do I want to spend that much money and a week plus vacation
mm,
to go and do this? But yeah, and you know what? Again, technology is wonderful because, like you, I've had the opportunity to speak via Zoom and
yeah,
platforms to South America, to the Caribbean, you name it, over these last 2 years, which has been a blessing.
me
And
too.
but I miss that personal face-to-face interaction.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, one of the questions I ask all my guests, because we are Leader Impact, is we are dedicated to leaders having a lasting impact. And as you continue to move through your own journey, have you considered what you want your faith legacy to be when you leave this world?
Hmm. Yeah, certainly a good question. And my faith legacy. Previous to that encounter that day with the wrestler, my legacy would have been all about career success. What did I achieve? How high up the ladder did I go? And really, that did a 180 after that. I want to now be a person, a leader, a coworker, someone people trust. So they might not like my answer, they might not like the response, but they're going to trust me because they know my character. That's important to me. But at the end of the day, I am far more worried today about the legacy I leave uh, with God. And it's my hope, my desire, my prayer to hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's ultimately the legacy I want.
It's your spiritual sales goal.
Yeah, for sure. Good, great. I love that.
All right. So, my last question, and I again ask all my guests, is what brings you the greatest joy?
Greatest joy. Well, let me go back in that story a little bit because I left you hanging with a little bit of it. My son. So when my wife and I ended up becoming Christ followers and becoming Christians, we had one rule for our son, and that was to come to church with us. And he would come to church with us reeking of whatever he was doing the night before. He'd literally show up Sunday morning, still drunk or stoned or whatever. And the old me wouldn't have brought him to church because I would have been worried about what people thought.
Right.
Now I didn't care. I'm happy you're here. I want you to come with me. And this was about a 2-year process, after all that other stuff, about a 2-year process of him coming most weeks with us. And one day he stood up and his life changed just like mine did. And he's never done drugs since that day. He's active in our church. He volunteers. He now has his own successful business. Such a change. And in his testimony, yeah, right? When he gave his testimony and told his story, he shared how seeing the change in his mom and I, he knew that God had to be real because that's the only way it could happen. And when he said that, Lisa, I bawled like a baby.
Yeah.
That was sorry.
That's good.
And so what brings me joy today, I don't believe that success in witnessing is seeing someone come to Christ. If that happens, hallelujah. But success and joy is having the opportunity to speak and share with somebody.
Yeah.
And I just leave the results to God. When I get to have a spiritual conversation, that's the best day of my life. And each time it happens, that's the next best day of my life.
You have a great attitude. I love that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for sharing with us today. It has just been a blessing to share the last 40 minutes with you and to hear your story. And I thank you for sharing all the little details, because I think people listening, I think we come from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved your fact, you went to church every Sunday, twice on Sundays.
Right.
But on Monday, not so much. You weren't. We put it all away, right?
Yes.
But you're here today to tell a story that's different. And I think we can all get there. We all can get there.
We can absolutely all get there.
So life isn't always easy, but it's a journey. So Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I love being part of this podcast, but this ends our time, Mike. But if anybody wants to get a hold of you, if they want to engage with you in any way, where can they find you? Or where, it's the best place.
A simple email, I guess, and I'm happy to give that out. It's mike.kazy@gmail.com, KAZY@gmail.com. I'm happy to take an email from anybody, particularly if you want to have a spiritual conversation. I am open to that 24/7. So wherever you might find yourself today as a listener, as a viewer, I just want you to know that you are loved, right? You are loved. God loves you, and no one is too broken or sinful for that. So reach out anytime.
Oh, well, no one's given their personal email, so thank you.
Happy to do it.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for joining us. It has been a pleasure. So, all right. Well, if you are part of Leader Impact, you can always discuss or share this podcast with your group. And if you are not yet in a Leader Impact group, we would love to have you. So check out the groups available in Canada at leaderimpact.ca, or if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, check out leaderimpact.com, or get in touch with us by email at info@leaderimpact.ca, and we will connect you. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or a review. This will help other global leaders find our podcast. Thank you for engaging with us, and remember, impact starts with you.